The Writer's Stage, Lesson 16, Note-Taking. For some reason, the step of note-taking is the one that most students like to skip. I don't know if it's because most information is now electronic and students tend not to print their sources and therefore they don't write down notes. Either way, it's a dangerous thing because what ends up happening is one of two things. Number one, either the student directly quotes constantly from the source, and then that means that the source is not being used properly, or the student just summarizes information after having read several sources and puts it into his or her own words. Often that ends up leading to plagiarism because they're presenting someone else's ideas in their own words without citing a source. In addition, not taking notes gives you less of an understanding of that article and in turn less of an understanding of your topic in general. There are several steps to taking notes. The first is to apply the CRAP test. That CRAP test sheet is located in your Lesson 15 folder, and CRAP basically stands for C, currency, R, relevance, A, authority, the other A is accuracy, and P is purpose. And so before you even decide that you're keeping a source, you want to apply that test to make sure that the source is a valid one and that it's useful for your purposes. Next, you want to read the source once through, and then go back and determine which parts apply to your topic and which do not. Not every article is going to be 100% useful to you. Then you're going to determine the best option for the information that you have. Are you going to paraphrase information? A reminder is that paraphrase is probably the most frequent use of source citation that you will have. Or are you going to directly quote? And finally, summary is another option for using information. For example, if you have a personal story of an individual impacted by whatever the situation may be, you might summarize that story and then cite the author who interviewed the person at the end. And then you're going to transfer all that information onto note cards. So there is the old-fashioned way of taking notes, and it's certainly viable and students certainly still use it. Taking notes the old-fashioned way involves writing information down on a card, whether it's a paraphrase, a direct quote, or a summary, writing the author information and the page number, if applicable, also on that card. The problem with these note cards is that these notes are particularly vague. Soldiers capture a capital city, soldiers try to change the laws are very vague and certainly need to be much more specific. I would have liked to have seen a paraphrase on this note card or a direct quote or a summary, but even that summary is far too vague for use in a research essay. Make sure that you always cite at the end of a card, though, as this author did, which was a good thing. As you take notes, you're slowly going to see subcategories emerge. Causes of end of rights for Afghan women, new laws, effects of new laws, efforts to help, etc. You're going to write them on your card as they come to you. I would recommend using pencil if you do that because those categories may change and shift as more sources are added to your note cards. And then you're going to sort them by category, and you can see how nicely it works out that you sort of have an outline developing here with these subcategories. For the super motivated person, you might also want to use colored note cards. The colors could represent the sources, so the Time magazine article could be in yellow and the CQ researcher report could be in purple, or the colors could be the subcategories that you're choosing. For those of us in the electronic age, electronic options are much more attractive. And so here are a few of the options that you have. The first is Windows OneNote. And OneNote is a free application, and if you have purchased a computer recently, you probably had OneNote already on your computer. OneNote requires Windows 8 to run. I do not have Windows 8, I have Windows 7, so I can't use OneNote, but that shouldn't stop you from using OneNote. The next is CorkboardMe. CorkboardMe was my favorite until it stopped going public and it stopped being free. It uses sticky notes, which are similar to those note cards, and you could actually color the sticky notes and change the color as you needed to, and stack them and move them. So it really worked well. This is a video and I'm not going to play it, but it really demonstrates the application. Unfortunately now it's called NoTap, and NoTap is no longer free. It's $10 per month. It looks like they're going back to a free option, but it isn't here quite yet. NoTap, you could do a 30-day free trial. The problem with a 30-day free trial for me is that I would forget to cancel it if I didn't want it any longer, and I would end up years later wondering what I'm paying $10 a month for. But that's up to you. If you want to try it, you might want to give it a shot. Another is called Literature and Latte, and it's hosted by Scrivener. Literature and Latte is the site that professional writers use. And look at how very cool these options are. Literature and Latte has a corkboard feature, similar to CorkboardMe, but it also can do much more complex things with sources. It is a wonderful option. It only costs $40 for the rest of your life, and you can get a free trial. And the good news about this free trial is that you can sign up for it, and I don't believe that you're going to be charged $40 at the end. I think you're just shut out of the system if you decide not to purchase it. It's available for Windows and Mac, and I would highly recommend it if you want to investigate that as an option. There's also something called Google Keep, and Google Keep is works in collaboration with Google Drive, but I haven't quite figured out how that works so far. The pro for Google Keep is that it works with your student email account. Everyone who has a StuMail account at JCCC has access to Google Drive and Google Keep. I use Google Drive all the time. In fact, I created my presentation on Google Drive. So aside from the fact that you have access to Google Keep, it also allows you to share your notes, and of course the best thing is that it's free. If you want to play around with it, it's a great no strings attached option. The downside, I think, to Google Keep is that you can't rearrange your notes. So let's take a look. Here's what I did in Google Keep. I pulled up some articles on Venezuela and their economic situation, and I recorded that information on Google Keep Notes. And so you can see that I can color code them, and in fact I can change the color coding at whim. I can cut and paste information onto the cards, which is very nice. I can change the subheadings whenever I feel like I want to, maybe I've changed my mind and I'm not going to do a history per se, so you could change all of these things around. I made sure that I cited my source, but the problem with this is that I'm just going to get stacks and stacks of these notes, and I won't be able to organize them in any different form than you see here. So whatever method you choose, you still need to take notes. So let's take a look at an article. This was published in Time magazine online, and it was from 2011, December of 2011, and it's about the cholera situation in Haiti. And in fact, this situation is something that they are still dealing with. In September in the news, the UN was officially being sued finally by the Haitians. The article started out with a story of a man who had cholera and is still dealing with its after effects. He cannot work. His wife is struggling to bring money in to put food on the table. And so Susan Ferreira started with that story as a nice way of piquing human interest. If I were going to keep that story, I might summarize it, reduce it from a full paragraph to a couple sentences, and cite Ferreira as the source. That's the use of summary. But we're going to talk about paraphrase and direct quotation here, so let's take a look quickly at this article. I am skimming and scanning the first paragraph. I've already read the article, keep in mind, but I'm skimming and scanning and my eyes naturally are drawn to the number 6,900. That to me says that I need to paraphrase, and because it's a fact. So, to date, the disease has killed more than 6,900 Haitians and infected more than 500,000. It's certainly information that I need for my essay, and I'm going to put it into my own words, keeping those numbers intact, and citing Ferreira at the end. Moving to the second paragraph, I'm skimming and scanning again, and it looks like The first part of the paragraph talks about who's to blame. It says that rumors spread quickly after that the unsanitary conditions at the Nepalese UN peacekeepers base was at fault, and scientific studies confirmed those suspicions. So those two pieces of information I'm going to put into a paraphrase as well. Who was at fault? The Nepalese UN peacekeepers. Continuing to scan, I see that the rest of the paragraph talks about the source of the cholera. And I see the words UN Secretaries General. So I'm going to take a look at that sentence. And I am reading that an independent report commissioned by the UN Secretary General noted haphazard, quote, shower and latrine piping, potential overflow from an open septic pit, and numerous other opportunities for contamination of the nearby water system. I'm going to take that sentence and I'm definitely going to paraphrase it because it points to the reasons for the cholera outbreak. So I have 3 paraphrases so far. I'm looking at this article and I'm focusing now on some of the direct quotes that are already in here. So I see at the bottom of the second paragraph a man named Joseph who's being quoted. He happens to be an attorney for the plaintiffs, and he says, "That's the real scandal to me, that the UN isn't assuming responsibility." Not a great quote in my terms. It's not well said, it's not interesting, it's sort of a fact that they're not assuming responsibility. So I'm not going to directly quote it. I'm going to move to the third paragraph because I see another quote here. This is by Emanuelle Schneider, a spokesperson for the UN, and she says, "Cholera is going to be here," and continues to say, "It's going to be here as an epidemic for the next 2 years, and then it will probably go into an endemic phase." Also, not a very interesting quote. What is interesting, though, is the sentence that follows it, and this sentence was written by the author herself, Susanna Ferreira. And she writes, "But unlike the earthquake, which killed more than 200,000 people, it's almost certain that someone was responsible for the cholera outbreak, and many Haitians believe someone should be held accountable for heaping a debilitating public health crisis on top of one of history's worst natural catastrophes." That's a really well-phrased statement and observation, and I'm going to directly quote her. So what would my note cards look like from this article? Well, I would have 4 of them, as I said. 3 are paraphrased, and the 4th is a direct quote. Notice at the bottom of each card, I have Ferreira listed. The only exception is the note card. Susan Ferreira is already stated in my quote, and so I won't need to cite her at the bottom of the card. Also note that I did not yet assign subcategories. This is one of the first articles that I've written about a condition in Haiti, and so I'm not quite sure where I'm going with my essay yet. So I'm going to hold off in assigning subcategories until I have more information. So why take notes? First of all, taking notes helps you make decisions about content. There was lots of information in that Time magazine article that I did not want, and it focused mainly on the suit with the UN, and it was not the focus of my essay. My focus was on the health situation. So I only pulled information about the health situation. I made decisions about the content. The second is that it helps make decisions about the methods. I distinctly and deliberately paraphrased some information and directly quoted other pieces. Third, it helped me to develop some essay subtopics. If I'm going to write just about the cholera epidemic, I'm going to definitely have a section on how it came to develop. And the peacekeepers and the open water situations all led to cholera. So I would have a subsection probably about that. It also helps me visualize my topic. I have a much better view of where I'm going with the essay once I have notes from several sources laid out in front of me, and I can see what subtopics I have information for and what subtopics are lacking. Fifth, and this is something I do, I'm not sure that everybody does this, but I always look for opportunities in the information that I'm getting. In general, once I have a whole host of note cards and I've sorted them into subcategories, I generally have a few that I just don't have a place for. I'm not quite sure where they fit. I then look to those to see if there's something that I might introduce my essay with or conclude my essay with. So it's always taking a global look at your essay and knowing that you still need to include information in an intro and a conclusion and keeping an eye out for that. And then finally, I take notes to protect myself from plagiarism. I am making sure that I'm paraphrasing distinctly, and I'm always making sure that I have my sources cited so that I always know where the information came from. That's a great way to protect myself from plagiarism. So in the end, you're going to continue to take notes from one source to another, and then you're going to have a better view of your topic in general.